It was a cold, rainy night in the walled city of Córdoba, once the shining jewel of Al-Andalus. The streets were quiet, except for the rhythmic clatter of raindrops against cobblestone. Watchmen patrolled the towering ramparts, their torches flickering weakly against the storm. None of them knew that beyond the mist-shrouded hills, an army of Christian soldiers was preparing for a surprise assault that would change history forever. Before dawn, the gates were breached. The defenders of Córdoba fought bravely, but the attack was swift and overwhelming. By sunrise, the city that had once been a beacon of Islamic learning, art, and science had fallen. Smoke curled into the gray sky, carrying with it the echoes of centuries of culture and knowledge. The great libraries that once held the works of philosophers, engineers, and poets stood silent, their wisdom scattered by war. Across Al-Andalus, city after city met the same fate. Toledo, Seville, and Valencia all fell under the advancing Christian kingdoms of the north. It seemed that the light of Islamic Spain, which had illuminated Europe for centuries, was fading into darkness. And yet, one city endured. Nestled in the mountains of southern Spain, Granada stood unconquered. Protected by steep hills, vigilant guards, and the magnificent Alhambra Palace, it became the last stronghold of Muslim rule in Iberia. Within its walls, rulers, poets, and scholars still thrived, determined to preserve the brilliance of their civilization for as long as they could. Unbeknownst to them, the Alhambra would not only be their refuge, but a testament to the genius of their engineers, whose mastery of water would soon defy both gravity and time itself. Granada stood like a miracle rising from the mountains. Surrounded by olive groves and snow-capped peaks, the city glimmered beneath the Andalusian sun, a final sanctuary for the dream of Al-Andalus. At its heart stood the Alhambra, a fortress that seemed to blend earth and heaven, stone and light. From a distance, it looked almost unreal, as if carved from the very clouds that drifted over the Sierra Nevada. When the Nasrid dynasty rose to power, they envisioned more than just a castle. The Alhambra would be a symbol of faith, intellect, and endurance, a palace worthy of the poets who sang of paradise. Marble courtyards, intricate arches, and gardens blooming with roses and jasmine would remind its people that beauty itself was an act of worship. But beauty alone could not make the Alhambra live. In the arid climate of southern Spain, water was life. Without it, the fountains would dry, the gardens would wither, and the promise of paradise would fade. The challenge facing the palace engineers was immense. The Alhambra sat on a steep hill nearly 200 meters above the nearest river. To build a palace of flowing water in such a place seemed impossible. Yet the engineers of Granada were heirs to centuries of Islamic innovation, from Damascus to Baghdad, from Cairo to Córdoba. They understood the language of water, how to guide it, lift it, and give it motion. When the ruler of Granada commissioned the palace, these engineers began their greatest project, a system that would channel life itself into stone. What they created would astonish the world. Beneath the poetry and the marble, hidden in silence and shadow, a network of veins began to pulse with water, carrying the secret heart of the Alhambra. The engineers of Granada began their task with a single question: how do you make water climb a mountain? The Darro River flowed gracefully through the valley below, but the Alhambra rose high above it, 200 meters of stone and earth, separating the palace from the river's life-giving current. Most would have abandoned the idea, but not these men. For them, impossibility was merely a challenge waiting to be solved. They journeyed 6 kilometers upstream, following the river's winding course until they reached a place where the water ran higher than the palace itself. There, they carved a new channel, the Royal Canal, and redirected a portion of the river toward the Alhambra. With meticulous care, they calculated the slope so that the water would flow naturally, neither rushing nor stagnating. Inch by inch, the channel traced its path through valleys and across ridges until it arrived at the fortress walls. But even that was only the beginning. The royal canal could deliver water, yes, but not with the power needed to feed fountains, baths, and irrigation gardens. To create pressure, they needed height, not just flow. So they built a vast reservoir high above the palace, where water could gather and gain potential energy. From there, it traveled through a network of underground pipes and wells, some plunging 60 meters into the earth. Water wheels powered by animals lifted the water into elevated storage pools, storing hundreds of cubic meters at a time. This ingenious design gave the Alhambra its heartbeat. Through invisible arteries beneath the marble floors, water surged and whispered, breathing life into courtyards, gardens, and fountains. For the first time in history, a palace became alive with flowing water, a living miracle sustained by human brilliance. At the heart of the Alhambra stood a courtyard that seemed to belong to another world. Marble columns surrounded a gleaming pool, and at its center rested a great white basin supported by 12 sculpted lions, each carved with astonishing precision. Their faces were fierce, yet calm, guardians of a secret that had mesmerized visitors for centuries. This was the Fountain of the Lions, a masterpiece of art and engineering that did more than sparkle. It measured time. Long before the ticking of mechanical clocks, these lions told the hours of the day using nothing but flowing water. Hidden within the central bowl was a system of channels and chambers so precise that it bordered on the miraculous. A steady trickle of water flowed into the basin, causing the level to rise at a constant rate. Around the rim were 12 tiny holes, each connected by pipes to one of the lions. When the water reached a particular height, it would spill through a hole and emerge from the mouth of its lion. One by one, hour by hour, each lion would come to life, releasing a jet of water that shimmered in the sunlight. By midday, all 12 lions roared in unison, a chorus of liquid light marking the peak of the day. Then, in a moment of brilliance, the system would reset itself. A hidden siphon inside the bowl would activate, draining the entire fountain in seconds, preparing it for the next cycle. To those who walked the palace gardens, it was simply beautiful. But to those who understood its secrets, it was proof that the minds of Granada's engineers reached beyond art into the very rhythm of nature itself. Beneath the courtyards of Alhambra, where marble met shadow, another wonder waited: the royal baths. Here, kings, poets, and envoys from distant lands would gather, their words mingling with the gentle murmur of water and the fragrance of burning cedar. The baths were more than a place of rest. They were a masterpiece of science and serenity. Hot water flowed from copper boilers, heated by wood fires deep underground. Steam traveled through narrow brick channels beneath the marble floors, warming them from below, the first underfloor heating of its kind in Europe. The air itself was transformed into comfort, rising through hidden vents and escaping through star-shaped openings carved in the domed ceiling. These glittering stars could be opened or closed to regulate the light and temperature, making the very roof a part of the palace's breathing system. Outside, water continued its silent pilgrimage through canals, fountains, and gardens. As the wind passed over the pools, it cooled and softened the air, turning the fortress into a paradise even in the fierce Andalusian heat. Every drop that entered the palace gave life to its plants, its people, and its poetry. Centuries later, empires would crumble, flags would change, and Granada would fall at last. But the Alhambra endured. Its walls still whisper verses of Arabic calligraphy. There is no conqueror but God. Its fountains still flow, powered by the same ancient design. And so, the palace remains a living memory of when faith, art, and science walked together, when water defied gravity, and when humanity reached for heaven, not through conquest, but through creation.